Welcome to the Happy Rebel podcast, where we explore the realms of finding your calling, living your values, and doing the work of self-healing. Through candid conversations with fellow seekers, we'll uncover ideas and concepts that challenge, expand, and empower us to embrace our authentic selves and live with intention. Hi there, I'm Kelly Street, owner of Happy Rebel and your guide on this journey. I'm known for my insatiable curiosity and tendency for pushing boundaries. I've always been a challenger, eager to question the status quo and explore the uncharted territories of personal growth. So join me as we navigate the twists and turns of life's journey, seeking out the wisdom and insights that illuminate our path towards fulfillment and rebellion against the ordinary. Before we get started, I want to remind you to connect with me on Instagram at Happy Rebel, where you can ask questions and share your thoughts. Remember, you are never alone on your path to becoming a happy rebel. This is the Happy Rebel Podcast. I'll welcome you all with a little grounding practice for today. I invite you to turn inward and take a moment for stillness, to allow yourself to be present to what is here, to leave the past behind you for this little while, and to let the future stay where it is. In this space of the Happy Rebel podcast, we gather to honor the dark on the shortest day of the year, to embrace what we often resist. That's the darkness, stillness, quiet, and shadow. This is the time of the winter solstice, the longest night, and a potent invitation to reflect, rest, and reset. I welcome you here in this space to listen, to learn, and to create a little space for the dark in your life. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome to this cozy little episode of the Happy Rebel podcast. I wanted to chat today about the winter solstice. It's coming up as I record it. It's a couple of days in the future, but hopefully you'll be listening to this on or around the solstice. So you might be asking, what even is the winter solstice? Well, let me tell you. The winter solstice is each year around December 21st in the Northern Hemisphere. And basically it signifies a pivotal movement in Earth's dance around the universe. And so on this day, the Northern Hemisphere tilts furthest from the sun. So it's the year's briefest amount of daylight and the most extended night. Historically, this astronomical event has captivated societies for thousands, tens of thousands of years. So ancient cultures, and I'll talk a little bit more about cultural celebrations, but for now, ancient cultures that were deeply connected to the Earth's and nature's cycles created structures like Stonehenge and in Ireland, Newgrange, so that they would precisely align with the solstice sunrise or sunset to honor that moment. So it's really, really magical. Beyond the physical occurrence, the winter solstice has a lot of profound symbolism. It embodies the sun's the solstice embodies the sun's metaphorical death and rebirth, a shift from darkness to light. And it reminds us of life's inherent cycles that we go through. The darkness and kind of that renewal and softness and quiet that comes with the longest night really is the promise of renewal for the next day, as the following day and all the days that follow after gradually extend up until the summer solstice, which is our day of most daylight. And then we start the return to the darkness. So in contemporary life, the winter solstice is really this opportunity for introspection, and it encourages us to embrace the stillness of winter, to turn inward, to reflect on personal growth and future aspirations that we might have. And winter solstice, as you can tell, and I'll talk a little bit more about what other cultures do to celebrate the solstice, it really transcends the astronomical roots, and it serves as a powerful metaphor for transformation and for resilience. So I just love the solstice, and I hope you start to love it a little bit more too if you don't know much about it after you listen to this. And so for me, the part of the reason that I celebrate or honor the solstice every year is that the winter solstice is really a reminder to slow down. It's a reminder to reflect and pause and think about the year that's passed. And there's something so beautiful about the significance of the longest night, because for me, darkness is something I used to be so afraid of and try to avoid at all cost. And heading into winter, there was always this kind of yuckiness feeling around. Yuckiness is the best word I can think of, but just sort of like, ugh, I hate the cold. I hate winter. I don't want to have the darkness all around me all the time. And so I kind of did everything I could to avoid it. But now, as I've gotten older and I have leaned into the discomfort of what winter means to me, I've been able to accept it and now honor that period of time where we have so much darkness. And for me, celebrating the solstice feels ancient. It feels like a really sacred tradition that allows me to connect with ancestors or connect with cultures that go back way further than the written word or our culture as we know it now, with stores and gifts and plastic and all of those things. There's something so simple and soft about the solstice that really connects to how I want to move through the world. So it's just a nice time, I believe, to honor something sacred, something unknown, and something natural that happens in the world and in our life with the light and the darkness that we experience. So that's why I celebrate the solstice. For me, part of the solstice celebration is really just the idea of honoring the dark. And I do that by doing early morning journaling where it's still dark out and my thoughts can be a little bit more contained. I really love that time of the day. And honoring the dark by lighting candles instead of turning on an electric light bulb. And really, the idea of honoring the dark also is just part of the work that I do in the world, which is that really deep, meaningful inner work, whether it's therapy or breath work or any of the other practices that I talk about all the time. And leaning into the dark, I feel like teaches us resilience, it teaches us trust in ourselves, and it teaches us to accept the things that may be unknown or that we don't necessarily have answers to or can't necessarily see. That is all about why I love celebrating the solstice. I would love to give a little bit of a background on the historical significance of it. I know maybe not everybody is into this nerdy stuff, but I think it's just really fun to acknowledge what we've done in the past and maybe bring that into what we do now, or just be like, oh, wow, that's so amazing that people have been celebrating this tradition, this natural phenomenon of the shortest daylight hours of the year for thousands of years, and who knows how much longer. So let's start with, in Norse traditions or Nordic traditions, they have Yule. And Yule marks the winter solstice, the darkest time of the year, and the rebirth of the sun. In Nordic traditions, it is a time to honor the cycles of nature. You're celebrating light's return. You're celebrating the promise of longer days ahead. And in Nordic traditions, they would do that by having wonderful feasts and lighting fires and having rituals around central role with wood, or a Yule log, as they call it. And the Yule log was burned to symbolize warmth, protection, and triumph of the light over the darkness. Yule was really a time for reflection and connection with your ancestors. So there was a lot of quiet time around the fires, or songs, or remembering those who came before you and telling those stories. And then also there was some time for stillness and softening in. You know, in the places where Norse traditions were started in the Nordic region, they got a lot of snow. Like I have, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it's actually snowing outside behind me, which I just love. It's such a beautiful symbol. But there was cold, dark snow, and you need to move a little bit more slowly in the winter. you need to have a little bit more intention behind the things that you do. And so I think the winter solstice really encapsulates all of that, especially in Nordic traditions. But they didn't just celebrate it in Yule and in Norse traditions. They also celebrated the winter solstice in ancient Rome. Their tradition was called Saturnalia, and it was an ancient Roman festival that honored the god Saturn, who was the god of agriculture and time. And it was celebrated around the winter solstice. And I imagine in my mind, this was like a several day celebration where people were feasting, just reveling, dancing through the streets, maybe getting a little bit crazy. And one of the things that would happen during Saturnalia traditionally is that there would be social inversion. So the traditional roles that were held in society would be flipped. So if you had slaves or servants, they would be temporarily freed during this time and they would be served by their masters, which I don't even want to get started on the whole slave thing, but it's just a really interesting thing that thinking about the light and the dark, that was something that in their society was flipped. They would have public banquets, they would do gift giving, which of course the merriment, the generosity, that's actually something that informed our modern practices around Christmas. And they would also light candles to symbolize hope and the return of light. So Saturnalia was a festival that was all about joy and abundance and communal celebration because they used, in ancient Rome, they used Saturnalia as kind of a break from the darkness, the harshness, the cold that they experienced in winter. You know, we're not during winter months for many parts of the world, you can't really grow as much. And so your food sources are limited. That's kind of winter solstice was sort of a break from keeping your resources consolidated or trying to kind of hoard. And you got to have a meal or a couple of days where you were like, hey, let's eat some sweets. Let's have a little bit more nourishing food here because we want to recognize that we're still going into a couple more months of hardship to come. So it's just a really nice way to give ourselves ancestrally a little bit of light in the darkness. So many puns intended. I'm just going to be all light and dark in this episode, just so you're aware. And not only in Nordic cultures or Rome, but they also celebrated or had rituals and ceremonies that were honoring the winter solstice in a lot of indigenous cultures. So the Zuni and Hopi peoples of the American Southwest celebrated Soyal, I believe is how you say it, the Soyal ceremony around the winter solstice. So they would have these sacred rituals where they would welcome the sun's return. They would mark the renewal of light and life. And these ceremonies included prayers and dances. And they would also, from what I've read, create these prayer sticks to bring blessings for the new cycle. And then other indigenous traditions, darkness really is not seen as a force to fear, but the darkness is seen as a place of creation and rest and wisdom. It's sort of bringing in that idea of, if you've ever heard about thinking about the womb as a dark cave, but a dark cave where life can be brought in and things are brought to life. So it's kind of that idea about the winter solstice for some indigenous cultures. And the Inuit peoples, who of course live in the long Arctic winters where they may have days of complete darkness, multiple days in a row, or weeks at a time, they honor the dark season as a time for storytelling, for sharing knowledge, and also for strengthening community bonds in preparation for the sun's return. So again, it's really that idea of let's come together, let's support one another, because this time of year is hard. We have fewer resources and things to go to, so we need to come together and help each other. A lot of cultures see the solstice as a time to offer gratitude for the sun, for its light and warmth, and they do this by doing fire ceremonies, by drumming, and by dancing. And that is meant to symbolize the harmony and the balance between light and darkness. And it's just also lovely, isn't it? All of these traditions throughout thousands of years. And a little bit more modern tradition is in Sweden, they celebrate St. Lucia Day. And this is held in both Christian and pagan traditions. It really marks the beginning of the Christmas season, so it's celebrated on December 13th. And St. Lucia Day is a festival led by a young girl who is dressed as Lucia, St. Lucia, the bearer of light, wearing a white gown and a crown of candles. And she symbolizes the light coming back in and light overcoming darkness. On St. Lucia Day, they'll sing songs, they'll light candles, and they will serve saffron buns, which is actually a tradition that I have incorporated and something that I do in our winter solstice celebrations as a family or with friends. Is we make these lovely saffron St. Lucia buns, and they turn out this beautiful orange color. And it just is kind of this little like, yep, the sun's coming back, the light's coming back in. It's really lovely. So there are a bunch of traditions and a bunch of ways that the winter solstice has been celebrated. A Christmas tree is beautiful. We have one. Lights on the tree. It's so lovely. Putting up Christmas lights. I think these are all ways in modern society that we in some way do honor the balance of light and darkness, is putting up those lights either in our house or outside of our house. We're really saying, hey, it might be dark out, but there's also some light here. And so just kind of thinking about the ways that you do things and celebrate this season in your home or in your life. And who knows, maybe some of those ways that you celebrate are actually a callback to something that traditions or cultures have done for 1,000 years or 2,000 years. Who knows? One of the things I love about the winter solstice and that I can see in all of these cultures and how they celebrate it is really the symbolism of balance, the symbolism of light and dark, of death and rebirth, and endings and beginnings. And I found this quote about why the solstice is even still relevant today. And that is, these ancient traditions remind us to slow down, to trust the cycles of nature, and to honor that darkness is not an enemy, but a necessary part of growth. Beautiful, right? I'd love to spend a few minutes just talking about the idea of winter and darkness and this season of withdrawal as I think about it, just in general. So a few years ago, I read this beautiful book by Catherine May called Wintering. If you haven't heard of it, I highly recommend going and getting the audiobook and listening to it ASAP. It's just such a beautiful book. And in that book, Catherine May uses the idea of wintering as a metaphor for times in our life when we need to withdraw or grieve or slow down. And she uses that through talking about winter and all of these cold, dark practices and the way that we celebrated darkness or honored the darkness in ancient cultures. It's really cool. It's a great book. But it acknowledges that winter isn't just this external thing that we experience, putting on your winter jacket or your layers, playing in the snow. It isn't just that that's happening outside of us. There's also this internal winter or internal season of our life that we need to acknowledge and accept. There are a couple of quotes that I thought were particularly powerful and captured that spirit in wintering. One of them is, wintering is a time of retreat and repair. It's a way to prepare for the next season of growth. And that really aligns with how the solstice in this natural season, how we see nature pulling back. Trees go bare, animals hibernate, daylight fades. And this is our invitation to embrace rest and stillness, to not have to do or produce or be as much. We can hibernate a little bit as well. The other quote that I pulled out from wintering is this: we have seasons when we flourish and seasons when the leaves fall from us, revealing bare bones. Given time, they grow again. And I think this quote makes me think about seasonal affective disorder and the depression that can sometimes arise in people during the winter cold months. Sometimes winter is hard. It can be really difficult to be in the darkness as much. It's like a biological thing. Our vitamin D resources go down, but it's also just this mental game that can happen where you look outside and if all you see is gray for days and days and days, it can get tough. So maybe instead, reframing winter or darkness as an opportunity to slow down and to care for yourself a little bit more deeply, care for yourself with more intention. So now I would really love to offer some practices for balancing out the darkness. A few things that you could do to really engage with the idea of rest and reflection. So a few of these things are to bring light and warmth into the season. You can do this by lighting candles, either having a candlelight dinner or by just in the morning when you get up before you turn on a light, maybe light a candle and experience that soft, gentle brightness instead of the harsh transition into bright overhead lights or lamps right away. There's something I find so sacred about lighting a candle on a dark evening. It's like this tiny altar for hope, and it's a way that we can summon warmth and connection. There are some cool meditations that I've even seen or done where you can meditate by staring at the flame of a candle. Maybe it'd get a little bright, maybe it'd mess with your eyes, so you don't have to do it if that feels like it would do that for you. But potentially, lighting a candle and staring into the flame to allow that light to really integrate into your body. Another practice that you could take on this winter is journaling for reflection. So I have a few prompts that I'd love to share. Grab a pen if you need, or bookmark this spot in the podcast. And those prompts are: what do I need to let go of? What seeds am I planting for the year to come? Where can I soften and rest? Winter really is the perfect time to reflect on endings and prepare for maybe some quiet beginnings, some slow, soft, and subtle beginnings for the new year. Another practice that you can incorporate is saunas or other warm practices. There's something really cool about Nordic traditions of sauna and then ice plunging, this contrast between the heat and the cold that can be really soothing and healing for our bodies to go through and to experience that stark contrast. It really creates incredible resilience. I'm a big cold plunge person. I'm a big sauna person. And so, of course, I love this. But are there ways that if you don't have a sauna or don't have a cold plunge, that you can incorporate heat and cold? And one way that I do this sometimes is like after a workout, I'm all heated up. Instead of taking a warm shower, which would either keep me heated or might still feel really good, I'll kind of shock my system by taking a cold shower. And it actually feels really, really good. And then I might turn the heat up because, realistically it's winter and my feet are kind of always cold. But just experiencing that range of temperature can be really great for our bodies and our blood circulation. Some other rituals or things that you can incorporate are reading poetry or books, just slowing down, doing gentle movement like restorative yoga. And then, of course, also not keeping yourself from the winter or from the cold and taking walks outside to really appreciate the stark beauty that is winter. So in thinking about the winter solstice, I have this to say. The solstice reminds us that darkness has its place too, that growth begins in the quiet, in the hidden places, and sometimes we need to step back and retreat to move forward. What might this season be asking of you? What can you release so that, like the returning light, you can emerge renewed? I want to end with a visualization that allows, hopefully, to welcome the dark and also create a little bit of light within. So this will be about 3 or 4 minutes for this visualization. And if you need to pause and you're not in a place where you can do that right now, feel free to do so. And I just want to say thank you and let all of you know how grateful I am for presence as a listener to this podcast. It's been such an incredible gift for me to give myself really over the last year. But it's been so cool to get feedback from the people who listen and tune in about what they have liked, what they want to hear more of. And I just welcome more and more of that feedback. So thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. All right. So now for this visualization, begin by finding a comfortable seat or potentially lying down if you're able. Close your eyes or let them gently rest and take a deep breath in, feeling the air fill your lungs. Slowly exhale, letting any tension melt away. Allow your breathing to settle into a natural, steady rhythm. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast, quiet forest. The sky above is a deep midnight blue, and the world around you is hushed. The only sound is the soft crunch of snow beneath your feet as you step into the forest, feeling embraced by the calm and stillness of the darkness. The darkness isn't empty or frightening. It's peaceful and full of potential. You feel it wrapping around you like a warm, heavy blanket, inviting you to rest. This is a space for pause, for renewal, and for letting go of what no longer serves you. With each breath, you release something: tension, worry, or a burden, and it dissolves into the dark, like seeds being planted in fertile soil to become something new and nourishing. Now gently place your hands over your heart. Imagine a small golden light flickering within you, like the flame of a candle. It's soft but steady, growing warmer with each breath. With each inhale, the light expands, illuminating your chest, your whole body, and eventually radiating out beyond you, like a glow that fills the forest. Feel the harmony between the darkness and this light you've created. The dark is not there to extinguish your light. It holds and protects it, like the earth cradles a seed in the winter. You are safe, you are held, and this light will guide you forward when the time is right. Take a final deep breath, feeling this balance of rest and renewal, darkness and light. When you're ready, slowly bring your awareness back to the present moment, gently opening your eyes or looking around the room. Carry this light with you as you move through the season, knowing that it's always within you. Thank you so much, listeners. Grateful for you. Enjoy your transition into the new year. Thank you for being part of the Happy Rebel podcast community. Stay connected with us on Instagram at Happy Rebel. If you've enjoyed our episodes, please consider rating, liking, and reviewing the podcast. It truly does help us grow. Until next time, this is Kelly Street. Remember, embrace the dark and the light.